I'm not gonna sit here and call myself some hardcore survivalist or backwoods expert, but I've been hiking for decades, long enough to know what I'm doing. I've done the big trails, the Pacific Crest, bits of the Appalachian, the Rockies, and they're great, but at some point they start to feel a little too charted. Predictable. You see more people than trees sometimes. That's not really what I'm after anymore. These days I do something a little different. I spend hours, sometimes full evenings, just scanning Google Earth, zooming in on patches of forest that don't have names. No trails, no reviews, no blogs, just green. That's where I go now. And honestly, it's been the most exciting way to hike in years. To keep myself from getting turned around, I came up with this little system. I printed out a bunch of high-vis vinyl stickers. I stick them onto trees as I go in, then peel them off on my way back out. No permanent marks, no damage, no trash, just a breadcrumb trail that's helped me avoid getting lost every single time. I even started to think I'd outsmarted the wilderness a little. The place I picked this time was a small patch of woods in western Pennsylvania called Marion's Hollow. No real history to it, just a weird little dip of land tucked behind old farmland and state roads. I couldn't find much about it, barely even a forum post, but that's what sold me. If it was boring, I'd be out in a few hours. If not, well, maybe it'd finally be something worth remembering. I parked at this little gravel turnoff that barely fit my car, checked the time. It was just past noon, and headed in like I always do. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Not yet anyway. I didn't think much of it at first. The trees looked fine, healthy, even. The trail was dry and well packed. No signs of erosion or anything that would normally hint at a bad area. But after maybe 30 minutes in, I started to notice the quiet. Not just the usual hush you get when you're away from roads and people. This was different. It wasn't peaceful. It felt paused. There weren't any birds chirping overhead. No rustling in the brush. Not even the high-pitched buzz of insects. And that's when it hit me. This place wasn't just quiet. It was still. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. I've been in quiet woods before, up in the Rockies during snowfall, in desert canyons where the wind does most of the talking. But this wasn't like that. This wasn't weather or distance. It felt off. I tried to push the thought away. Told myself maybe the wildlife had moved deeper in, or maybe I was just in a dead zone between activity. It happens. Not often, but it does. So I kept going, checking in on my stickers, making sure I could still see the last one before placing the next. Everything still felt normal enough that I wasn't going to turn around over a bit of quiet. And then I heard it. Just once. A low, drawn-out moan that seemed to float through the trees. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. Just at the edge of hearing. I couldn't place it. Not a tree creaking, not an owl, not wind. It almost sounded human, but not quite. I stood there for what felt like too long, just listening, waiting for it to happen again. But it didn't. And so, like an idiot, I kept walking. I don't even know why I stopped at the first one. It didn't look like anything at a glance, just a rough strip of bark missing from the side of a tree. Could have been from an animal, or storm damage. But I slowed down anyway. There was something about the shape that didn't feel random. Almost like someone had taken a blade to it, but not to carve anything clear, just to scrape. I kept walking, still chalking it up to weather or wear, until I saw another tree with a similar mark. Same height, same direction. Then another. And that's when it stopped feeling accidental. These weren't initials or hearts carved by bored hikers. They weren't symbols either. At least, not ones I could recognize. Just jagged gashes, uneven but obviously done by hand, or at least with intention. It felt like someone had been out here trying to mark something. A trail, a boundary, maybe a warning. I didn't know, but I knew they didn't want to be understood. Not really. There was a kind of hostility in the randomness, like whoever made them wanted you to feel uneasy but couldn't be bothered to explain why. I kept walking because part of me didn't want to overreact. People do weird things in the woods all the time. I've seen makeshift shrines, piles of rocks stacked like totems, even a tree hung with dozens of baby doll heads once in Oregon. You learn to shrug it off, but something about these carvings stuck with me. The deeper I went, the more there were. And the more it felt like I was being watched. Not in a paranoid way, just that prickling tension that settles in when you know instinctively that you're not wanted somewhere. That's when I decided to turn around. I hadn't even been hiking that long, but suddenly that didn't seem like the point anymore. It almost slipped past me, just a flicker of something unnatural between the trees, a bit of blue, maybe green. I thought it was litter at first, maybe a tarp someone had abandoned, or the remains of a trail marker. I veered off the path a little to check it out, mostly out of habit. Curiosity always gets the better of me. What I found wasn't just a tarp, it was a full-blown campsite, small, tucked out of sight, probably not visible from any main trail if there even was one around here. At first glance, it looked old. The fire ring had been used, but not recently. The charred logs had long gone cold. There were wrappers, some sun-bleached, some surprisingly fresh. A rusted thermos lay half buried in leaves, lid off like someone had dropped it mid-use and never bothered picking it up. But no tent poles, no sleeping bag, no gear, just traces, like someone had stripped it fast or taken only the essentials. There weren't any footprints either, not recent ones, anyway, just absence, an emptiness that felt intentional, like whoever was here had left in a hurry, or wanted to make it seem like they'd never been there at all. I stood there longer than I meant to, trying to make sense of it. It didn't add up. If it was a hunter's camp, it would have been more secure. If it was a backpacker, there'd be more gear, more structure. And if it was an abandoned site, it would have looked older than this. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. Just a forgotten pit stop in the middle of nowhere. Happens all the time. But something about the way it blended into the trees, the way it was nearly invisible until you were right on top of it, it didn't feel accidental. Seeing one of my stickers again should have felt like a win. I'd been retracing my steps for a bit, and spotting that first bright shape on the tree gave me a small jolt of relief. I peeled it off like I always do, habit, rhythm. But the next one felt off. I had to reach lower for it. Not by much, but enough to make me pause. At first, I thought maybe I'd just misremembered. Trees look different, coming back the other way. Angles shift, things seem taller or shorter. I kept going. Then I hit a curve in the trail, only it wasn't familiar. I didn't remember veering left on the way in, and the incline was wrong too. The forest felt like it was dipping into something, a hollow I swear wasn't there before. I stopped walking, tried to replay the route in my head. I'm usually good at that, at keeping mental maps, but this didn't line up. I stared at the next marker ahead, just barely visible on a tree near what looked like the lip of a ravine. I would have remembered something like that. No way I missed it. And that's when it hit me. Someone had moved them. Someone had been watching me place those markers and deliberately shifted them. Not wildly, just subtly enough to keep me on a similar path while steering me somewhere else. Somewhere specific. It sounds paranoid even saying it now, but I know how I set those markers. Same height, same spacing, same orientation. I stood there for a while, staring into that dip in the land, waiting for something, movement, a sound, anything, to confirm what I already knew but didn't want to believe. I didn't get it, and I didn't wait. I turned and started back the way I came, trusting my memory more than the stickers. I started back faster than I'd like to admit. Maybe it was the growing sense that something was wrong. Maybe it was just pure instinct. But the pace I set was faster than I should have been moving in a place like this. The forest was still, too still. All I could hear were my own footsteps, the sharp sound of my breathing cutting through the heavy silence. Everything else was gone. No rustling leaves, no distant bird calls, no crackling underbrush, just me and the woods. And then it came again, the sound, that low, drawn-out moaning. But this time, it wasn't far off. It was closer, louder, sharper, like it was right behind me, moving faster, trying to catch up. I couldn't help myself. I kept turning around, half expecting to see someone or something following me. My eyes scanned the trees, but there was nothing, just endless woods, and that sound chasing me, tightening its grip. It felt too real to be just my imagination. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it, but all I could do was run. My legs burned with every step. My chest felt tight as I gasped for air, but I didn't dare stop. The noise wouldn't let me. How long was I running? I don't even know. Time seemed to stretch. The further I went, the more the ground seemed to give way under my feet, the harder it became to breathe. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. Every part of me was telling me to keep moving, keep going, even when I felt like I was going to collapse. I don't know when the sound stopped. Maybe I just outran it, or maybe it realized it wasn't going to catch me. Either way, when I finally slowed down, I didn't look back. I just kept pushing forward, hoping that I was heading in the right direction, that I'd make it out. At that point, I was desperate. I pulled my phone from my pocket, fingers shaking. 1 bar, just enough to get a pin on where I was, a small dot showing the parking area. That tiny flicker of connection gave me some hope, but it was brief. Right as I found my location, the signal vanished. No surprise there. This area was remote, and I'd known the chances of getting a solid signal were slim, but somehow it didn't matter. I knew which way to go now. The direction was clear, and I didn't hesitate. I kept moving, faster than I probably should have, but I couldn't afford to waste time. The sound followed me the entire way to the tree line, like it was still there, just behind me, pulling me deeper into the woods. It was strange. There was no change in the pitch, no shift in its rhythm, just this steady, relentless wail, like a ghost that hadn't quite realized I was getting away. The moment I stepped into the clearing, breaking the edge of the forest, it stopped. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. It was like the woods had exhaled, like it knew I was gone. I didn't look back. I didn't stop to double check. I didn't even breathe properly until I was in my car, doors locked, hands gripping the wheel. I started the engine without a second thought, and the tires kicked up gravel as I sped off. Only when I hit the highway did I feel like I could finally exhale, but even then, I couldn't shake it. I still don't know what happened back there. I don't know if it was a person, if something was stalking me, or if I was just losing my mind. But I do know one thing, it wasn't something I'm eager to repeat, and I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. Alright, so here's how it started. You ever go through one of those breakups that just knocks the wind out of you? Yeah, mine came with a side of betrayal. Walked in on my girlfriend and one of my closest friends. Cliché, right? But when it happens to you, it doesn't feel cliché. It just feels like the floor got ripped out from under you. So I did what made sense to me at the time. I threw my gear in the back of my car and just started driving. No plan, no idea where I was headed. I just pointed west and kept going until the roads got empty and the air smelled like pine. That's when I saw the sign for the Swatch Range in Colorado. I'd always wanted to hike out there. Quiet, rugged terrain, minimal traffic. The kind of place where you can walk for hours and not see a single person. And that's exactly what I was looking for. Not some bustling national park trailhead with campers and loud families. I wanted solitude, real, honest, bone-deep quiet. I found a narrow access road that barely looked like a road at all. No signs, no fencing, no other vehicles. Just me and a stretch of trees that seemed to go on forever. It was perfect. Parked the car, threw on my pack, checked my GPS. No cell service, not even a bar. That's how I knew I picked the right spot. I marked my starting point on the map app just in case, and started hiking toward a lookout I'd pinned earlier. About 4 miles out, maybe 1,000 feet of gain. Nothing crazy, just enough to stretch the legs and clear the head. Or at least, that's what I thought. So I'm about an hour into the hike. Got into a solid rhythm, breathing in that crisp mountain air, starting to feel a little more like myself again. The trail wasn't marked, but it followed a natural incline along a ridgeline, weaving through pines and rock patches, with just enough climb to keep me focused and out of my own head. You know the kind of hike that feels like a long exhale? That's what it was shaping up to be, and then it started to rain. Not a downpour or anything, just that steady, annoying drizzle that finds its way into your boots and behind your neck no matter how prepared you are. I don't know what it is about hiking in the rain, but I hate it. Always have. Everything gets heavier. The sounds get weird, and the smell, damp soil and cold air makes me feel trapped instead of calm. I stopped for a minute under a tree, hood up, debating whether to push through or call it. I mean, the lookout point wasn't that far, maybe a couple more hours round trip, but I didn't come all the way out here to be miserable. I came to feel like I could breathe again, so I figured screw it, I'll come back tomorrow. Maybe the skies would clear. Maybe I'd feel more up for it. So I turned around, and here's the thing, I've replayed that moment so many times. That choice, that tiny, seemingly nothing decision. If I had kept going, I probably never would have gone back the same way. Never would have seen what I saw. That decision to turn back didn't just cut my hike short. It changed everything about the rest of that day, might have even saved my life. When I broke through the last patch of trees and caught sight of the trailhead, I remember this weird little flicker of relief, like, alright, cool, bummer of a hike, but I'll dry off, find a greasy diner, maybe even a cheap motel. That kind of thinking lasted all of 3 seconds, because the first thing I saw when I got closer was my front passenger side tire, or what was left of it. The rubber was shredded like someone had taken a box cutter to it. Clean, deep slashes. Not like a puncture, not like a blowout. This was intentional. I circled the car, my stomach sinking deeper with every step. All four tires trashed. It wasn't random, and it wasn't an animal. No bear or coyote is out here slashing tires with surgical precision. Someone had been here. While I was on the trail, that's when it hit me. I hadn't seen another soul since pulling off the highway. This wasn't some tourist trail. Whoever did this either followed me in or was already here. And now maybe they were still close. I froze for a second, did a slow scan of the woods around the clearing. Trees everywhere. No movement, no sound. Just the steady patter of rain tapping through the canopy, dripping onto my jacket and the roof of my car. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. I checked my phone, still no signal. Of course, I was stuck, alone and stranded. And the road I'd driven in on. It wasn't exactly a casual walk back to town. It was miles of muddy, narrow trail through dense forest, and out in the open the whole way. It didn't feel safe anymore. Not exposed like that. Only one real option, go back. Head toward the ridge. Higher elevation might give me service. Maybe even a moment to think. If nothing else, it'd put distance between me and whoever did this. About halfway back up the trail, pushing through the drizzle and trying not to think about how screwed I was, I spotted something that made me stop mid-step. There was a tree maybe 15 feet off the trail, thick with moss, and something about it just looked off. Then I saw it. A trail cam. One of those camo-colored wildlife cameras strapped around the trunk, pointed directly at the path I was on, not angled for deer or anything like that. This thing was aimed head-on like it was expecting me. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was for some nature study. Could have been set up by a hunter or a researcher cataloging wildlife or something. But then, 20 yards up the trail, I saw another one. Different model, different angle. Then another tucked low, almost hidden behind a rock outcropping, and another higher up, mounted in the branches. All of them facing toward the access road, toward me. This wasn't research. This wasn't wildlife tracking. These cameras were set up to watch people, or more specifically, to watch a person. Me. I felt this cold weight settle into my chest, like the ground had shifted under me. I realized whoever slashed my tires hadn't just stumbled across my car. They'd been watching since I arrived, maybe even before that. Maybe they knew I'd picked this road, knew I hiked alone, knew I liked places with no signal. This wasn't a random act of vandalism. It wasn't bad luck. It was planned, coordinated. I wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was exactly where someone wanted me to be, and I had no idea what they wanted. I was already on edge by the time I started hearing it. The faint rustling from behind, too soft for an animal, too deliberate. I'd stop, hold my breath, and listen. Nothing. Then I'd move again, just a few steps, and the rustling would start up again, like whoever or whatever was keeping pace with me. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or maybe a squirrel getting too close. But as the sound grew more rhythmic, I knew it wasn't just nature, it was someone. They were following me. I could feel the sweat building up. Despite the rain, adrenaline pumping through me, sharp and quick. I had to do something. I couldn't just walk back on the main trail. not with whatever was stalking me so close. So I made a snap decision. I veered off the path, cutting through thick brush and trees, hoping to lose them in the undergrowth. Maybe I'd thrown them off. But then I found it. A camp, tucked away between a cluster of pines, just off the trail. The sight of it made my stomach drop like a rock. There was a rough circle of logs arranged around a fire pit, charred remains still smoldering. A metal pot sat nearby, still wet on the inside. Someone had been cooking, and recently, too recently, the smell of burnt wood still lingered in the air. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. My feet were already moving, but the feeling, the nagging, sinking feeling, didn't leave me. It followed me. Every step I took, it was there. And the sound, that rustling, it didn't stop. It was like a constant presence, never far behind. I couldn't shake the thought. I wasn't alone in these woods anymore. And whoever else was out there wasn't just watching, they were hunting. It started out so small, just a flicker of movement at the edge of my vision. A foot, barely visible behind a tree, almost too quick to catch. But I saw it, and that was all it took. My heart slammed into my chest as the panic hit full force. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, so I did. I didn't think. I didn't stop. My feet slammed into the wet earth, and I charged through the forest, blindly, with nothing but the sound of my own breathing and the rhythm of my pounding heart. But the woods weren't quiet anymore. They weren't peaceful. They were alive. Branches cracked like thunder. The underbrush rustled violently. The sound of footsteps, their footsteps, came from every direction. They were close, too close. I could hear their breath, the faint shuffle of feet behind me, but I couldn't risk looking back. Not yet. If I slowed down for even a second, it would be over. Still, I couldn't help it. I stole a glance over my shoulder, praying I wouldn't see anything, but I did. There were 6 of them, maybe more. All of them wearing pale clothes, blending into the trees like they belonged there. No shouting, no threats, just movement. Fluid, fast, and terrifyingly silent. They were closing the gap without a single sound. I pushed myself harder. My legs burned with the effort, each stride feeling heavier than the last. My lungs felt like they were shattering inside my chest, every breath a jagged gasp. I wanted to stop. I wanted to collapse and let my body give up. But I knew if I stopped running, if I slowed down, it would be the end. They would catch me, and I wasn't about to let that happen. So I kept running deeper into the woods with no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I had to keep moving. The moment I cleared the tree line and saw the headlights, I nearly collapsed with relief. A sheriff's SUV parked at the edge of the forest. I didn't think, I just ran straight for it, my feet pounding the dirt and gravel, my whole body shaking, soaked to the bone from rain and sweat. I was barely breathing, gasping for air as if the very forest itself had been trying to suffocate me. I reached the vehicle and stumbled to the passenger side, knocking on the window, desperate, frantic. The deputy inside didn't hesitate. He opened the door, practically pulled me inside, and shut it quickly behind me, like he was already used to this kind of thing. "You're safe now," he muttered, his voice calm, almost too calm for the situation. He grabbed the radio and called in for a tow. Then he turned to me, his gaze sharp. "What happened?" I don't know why, but I didn't hold back. I told him everything. The cameras in the trees, the footsteps in the woods, the strange camp and the chase. I told him about the people, pale, silent, relentless. I couldn't stop myself from shaking as I spoke, my words spilling out in a torrent. The deputy listened intently, never interrupting. When I finished, he didn't seem shocked or surprised. His eyes just narrowed slightly, like he'd heard this kind of story before. "That stretch of forest gets weird," he said, his voice low and steady, almost like he was sharing an old secret. "Lot of survivalists, anti-government groups, even some cult activity in those parts. People who don't take kindly to strangers poking around." He paused, looking me square in the eyes. "You're lucky you made it out before nightfall. Once the sun goes down, things get a lot more dangerous around here." I didn't need to ask what he meant by that. It was clear now. I wasn't just some random target. I wasn't the first person to get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if I hadn't turned around when I did, I probably wouldn't have made it out. You know how every friend group has that one house? The one that doesn't even need a text, people just show up. Yeah, that was mine. I didn't realize it at the time, but my place had this weird magnetism to it. It wasn't fancy, and it definitely wasn't spotless, but it had vibe. We had this old basement that my dad called a rec room, but let's be honest, it was a full-blown man cave. Pool table with a ripped corner pocket, a busted speaker system that only played it too loud, and enough leftover beer to keep people hanging out way longer than they probably should have. My parents were cool about it too. A little too cool, maybe. They stayed upstairs and never asked questions. It felt like our own little bunker. But the best part of that house wasn't inside. It was what sat just beyond the backyard. A stretch of overgrown grass that led to the woods. Not the kind of woods you go hiking in with gear and a plan. These trees didn't have trails. They just sort of swallowed you. No one really kept track of them, and no one patrolled them. You could disappear back there for hours. And if you kept walking long enough, through the brush, over the fallen logs, past the little stream that always smelled weird, you'd hit Croft Reservoir. Not a lake you bring your family to. Not something you find on a map. Just a big, forgotten stretch of water behind a broken fence and a couple faded warning signs. I don't know how to explain it, but back then that place felt like mine. Like it was waiting for me. Like it belonged to me. And maybe that was the problem. It started the way a lot of dumb ideas do, with nothing better to do. We were just lounging in the basement, half watching a movie no one really cared about. While the speaker buzzed with some beat-heavy playlist Dylan insisted on queuing up. I remember he tossed a bottle cap across the room. It bounced off the wall, and without even looking up he muttered something like, "We should hit the reservoir." No one even hesitated. It was that kind of night. Stale air, mild buzz, all of us itching for something to shake us out of that weird weekend apathy. So we just got up. No plan, no jackets, no flashlights. Just grabbed a few warm beers and slid out the back door like we'd done 100 times before. There were 5 of us. Me, Dylan, Marcus, Benji, and Nico. The usual lineup back then. We were always somewhere together, and that trail? It wasn't new to us. It started as this thin break in the trees behind my house, barely even noticeable unless you were looking for it, and from there it sort of swallowed you up. That night it was soggy as hell. It had rained earlier and the mud was doing its best to claim our sneakers. I kept slipping, but no one said anything. We just kept going. Looking back, I can't figure out why we were so eager to go. The reservoir had nothing waiting for us. No bonfire, no party, no girls, just water and silence, and the thrill of maybe getting caught. But at the time it felt like the only thing that made sense. We weren't thinking, not really, and definitely not about what could be waiting out there. Getting to the reservoir was the easy part. We broke through the tree line and stepped onto the rocky near side like we always did. It felt familiar, automatic. We messed around for a bit, tossing rocks into the water, making dumb bets about who could skip one the furthest, cracking open beers that tasted like warm metal. But there was something off. At first, I thought it was just me, like maybe the woods were playing tricks, or maybe the air felt different because of the rain earlier. I kept glancing over my shoulder without meaning to, feeling that crawl at the back of my neck like we weren't as alone as we were pretending to be. No one said anything though. Not until Nico froze mid-sip and squinted down the path along the shoreline. He didn't say a word, just sort of jerked his chin toward it. We all followed his gaze. Way off, near the bend where the trees dipped low over the trail, there was someone moving. Slow, heavy steps. They were dragging something behind them. A big black garbage bag, but even from a distance, you could tell it wasn't just full of leaves or junk. It sagged weird. Like whatever was inside had weight to it. Real weight. No one spoke. We just stood there, beers half raised, stomachs tightening. I kept thinking it was nothing. Probably some maintenance worker, some weirdo dumping junk. But even telling myself that didn't make it sit right. The way the figure moved, slow, deliberate, like they knew no one should be watching. Like they weren't in a hurry because they didn't think they had to be. And for the first time that night, I wished we hadn't come. I kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was cleanup crew stuff. Maybe someone was dumping old camping gear or something gross but explainable. I just wanted it to be nothing. some backwoods weirdness we could laugh about later. But then more people came out of the woods. 3 of them. No rush, no noise, just stepping out like it was the most normal thing in the world. 2 were dragging their own black bags. Same shape, same dead weight look to them. The 3rd, he was carrying a kayak, just hoisted it over his head like it weighed nothing. And that's when something in me kind of snapped to attention. This wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic or messy. It was methodical, calm, like they'd done it before. The first guy was already near the water, untying the bag or doing something over it, and the others just moved into place. No signals, no whispers. They just started loading the kayak like they knew exactly what came next. I couldn't stop thinking about how silent it all was. They weren't talking. They didn't even seem to acknowledge each other. It was like watching people work a job they hated but had done 1,000 times before. And I remember thinking, we weren't supposed to see this. That was the only thought looping in my head. Not fear, not even shock, just that creeping dread, like we'd stepped into something already in motion, something bigger than us. I didn't say it out loud, but I could feel it. The others felt it too. We were standing too close to something we were never meant to witness, and they hadn't noticed us yet. But it was only a matter of time. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. We weren't even breathing heavy, just standing there like statues, watching them load that kayak in complete silence, hoping, praying they wouldn't look up. And then my phone went off. That awful, chirpy ringtone I always meant to change. I don't even remember who it was, probably some spam call or group chat ping, but it might as well have been a siren. It sliced through the air, bouncing off the water, cutting into everything. Every head by the shoreline snapped up. They saw us. I didn't need to say anything. We all moved at once, just pure, terrified instinct. I dropped my drink without even realizing it. We scrambled up the bank and tore into the woods, branches smacking our faces, feet slipping on the wet trail. The mud sucked at our shoes like it didn't want us leaving. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The only thing in my head was run, over and over. Somewhere in the chaos, I realized something was wrong. Benji wasn't with us. I don't even know when he split off, if he tripped or ducked in another direction or panicked and froze. 1 minute we were 5, and the next we were 4. I called out his name without thinking, but the forest swallowed it. The trail didn't help either. Too many turns, too many ways to get lost. The woods felt different then. Not like a place I used to cut through on lazy afternoons. Not like a shortcut to the reservoir. It felt older, tighter, like it didn't want us getting out. And I couldn't shake the thought, what if they're not just chasing us? What if they're hunting one of us already? We made it back to the yard, finally. It didn't even feel like my yard anymore. Just some patch of grass we collapsed onto, scraped up and breathing like we'd just escaped a burning building. Nobody spoke. We didn't have to. Every one of us had the same question in our heads. Where's Benji? 5 minutes passed. Maybe more. Felt like hours. Then he stepped out of the woods. The relief hit first sharp and overwhelming, but it didn't last. Not when we saw his face. He wasn't out of breath like us. He was pale, silent, wide-eyed like he hadn't come back from the same forest we did. He looked like he'd been somewhere worse. He told us he hid, said he dropped to the ground behind a fallen tree the moment he realized he was alone. He didn't yell for us, didn't even move, just lay there in the cold mud, face down, heart pounding in his ears. Someone had walked right past him. Within feet, he said the guy was muttering, low and constant, but he couldn't make out the words. Said he was dragging something behind him, something metal, maybe heavy. He thought it might have been a tool, but the way he said it, I don't think even he believed that. Whatever it was, it clinked and scratched along the rocks as the man moved past. Benji said he held his breath the whole time, said he was sure the guy knew he was there, that he was being toyed with. But the man just kept walking, and eventually he was gone. I remember looking at Benji and realizing he wasn't just shaken, he was different, like a switch had flipped somewhere deep inside him. And maybe, deep down, we all knew something had changed in us too. The cops actually showed up. I didn't think they would. Figured they'd brush it off as a bunch of teenagers spooking themselves in the woods. But they came, walked around the yard, took it seriously. That part still surprises me. Then they found the footprints, not ours, not even close in size or pattern, just a single muddy trail leading right up to our back fence, like someone had stopped there, like they watched us run. And then, a few days later, it was on the news. 3 bodies pulled from Croft Reservoir. I don't even remember their names now, but I remember the chill that ran through me when I saw the anchor say no suspects. Just that. No motive, no leads, nothing. I kept thinking about that night, about the calm way they moved. The kayak, the bags, how it looked like something they'd done before, how they didn't rush, not even when we ran. I also couldn't stop wondering, did they know where I lived? Could they have followed our trail back? It wasn't that hard to retrace. And my mom, she swore she saw people in the trees after that. Said she caught flashes like someone taking pictures. She even claimed once she saw a man just standing out by the fence in the middle of the night. I told her it was probably nothing. But truth is, I didn't believe that either. We moved not long after. Sold the house, left everything. I didn't even pack much. Didn't want to take anything from that place with me. Still don't. But every once in a while I'll think about Croft Reservoir. About how quiet it was. About how much I used to love that trail. And I wonder why, after everything, part of me still wants to go back.